Well, my gosh, thank you so much for being here. Jonathan Foust here. I will be guiding the following short meditation and the following talk. Thank you so much for making the time. Before we begin, we have our traditional thank yous. First of all, to our producers, Glenn Harrison and Leo Gimo, thank you for making this possible. To our mindful movement teacher, Rita Moran, and our mindful dialogue leaders, to Ray Manioki and Tara Cassidy, thank you. If you'd like the whole experience on Monday nights, starting at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, you can join Rita for about 50 minutes or so of mindful movement that'll prepare you for the meditation and talk. And afterward, feel free to join Ray and Tara for kind of an open time of dialogue, talking about practice, about the talk, about what's happening in your life, and mostly connecting with really good, kind people. So, those links, the Zoom links for mindful movement and mindful dialogue, are available on my website and on my Facebook page. So please feel free to check that out. Also, just to say thank you for your support. Your support has really made this possible all these years, not only in my lavish lifestyle, but actually covering the pretty extensive costs of producing these talks. A big thank you to the Insight Meditation Community of Washington for supporting this, and to my friends at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Arlington, Virginia, which has been the home of Monday Night Meditation. And there's a rumor that they may be streaming it on at the church if you're interested in joining that great community. So, I think we're ready to rock. Just to say as well, if you would like to sign up for a mailing list, I offer a compendium of my talks and my best photography for the month. That is available via my website. And there's also a weekly version as well if you want to hear what's coming up. So, this talk is the final talk on steadiness and equanimity. It's kind of considered the flower of practice. And I thought we might do a short meditation, kind of reflecting on that sense of steadiness. One way to think of it is, what is it that doesn't change? How do we take more refuge in that place? So, if you're ready, either fasten or unfasten your seatbelt, and we will dive into about a 12-minute meditation. Meditation isn't necessarily better longer, so let's see if we can drop in and find out what happens. If you like, take a moment to close your eyes. If you close your eyes, just notice there's something really quite powerful about moving from the outer world to the inner world. When you shut the eyes, you are opening the eyes internally, more aware of feeling, more aware of the movement of thought and sensation and mood and states. You might, as you check in with your body, just sense, is there any way you might need to move or adjust your posture? Feel free to move from side to side. You might reach your arms up overhead, stretch out in any way that feels good. We're preparing the field for meditation here. And once you have found a way to kind of settle in, you might now turn your attention toward this practice of gathering attention in the here and now. An effective way to do that is to focus on your breathing. And as you breathe in slow and deep and full. And as you exhale, again, slow and deep and full. And if you'd like to develop more concentration, be a little bit more surgical for the next, let's just say the next 60 to 90 seconds, breathe into the count of 4 or 5, or maybe even 6. And then on the exhalation, match the length of the exhalation with the length of the in-breath. How detailed can you focus? Where precisely do you feel the breath on the inside as you breathe. And now, over the next 3 breaths, how intimately can you feel and track the sensations of the breath on the inside? Your breathing can be a powerful ally. This remembering of here and now. You might now relax all control of your breath and just feel the natural flow, the natural gliding of the breath, effortless and free-flowing. Part of this gathering process is about becoming more and more intimately aware, and you might sense from the inside out. Feel your forehead. Imagine your forehead smooth. Could you relax or soften the muscles around your eyes? The muscles behind your eyes. Feel now the inside of your mouth and notice if you can relax your tongue. Relax the jaw. Soften through the whole inside of the mouth and feel, if you can, the volume of your lips. Imagine, if you wish, your arms like heavy drapes hanging from your shoulders. And as you feel the weight and the heaviness of your arms, you might imagine that weight and heaviness drawing you into deeper and deeper relaxation. Could you soften the lower back and the buttocks? Could you relax or soften your belly? Is it possible to relax or soften the floor of the pelvis and the hip joints? And feeling now from the inside out, sensing down the length of the legs, as if you could sense down through the center of the bones. Sensing now on the inside through the whole body, what could soften or relax or let go right now? And in this sense of softening, you might focus your attention on one sense point, maybe the breath, maybe sounds, maybe the feeling in the palms. But notice if it's possible to feel what's happening on the inside right here at the point of the breath, the most predominant. the sound vibrations, maybe the sense of space in the palms. And just for the next few minutes, let this be your primary source of concentration. The mind will wander, but guide the attention back. Noticing, if you can now, the sense of foreground and background. The anchor of your attention, breath, sound, or feeling in the palms in the foreground, and in the background or to the periphery. Notice everything that is changing. Notice who you are as the observer, the witness. And you might inquire, in the midst of everything that is changing, thought forms, moods, sensations, different states coming and going, can you sense something here that doesn't change? This quality of awareness itself, not judging, non grasping, without any preferences, just simply awake to change, letting things be. And you might explore in this remaining minute or so, letting go of any sense of controlling your experience, any sense of doing, and open to a sense of being. And you might explore the following question. In the absence of effort, what do you feel and what do you notice? And you might now very gently deepen your breath. Notice the sounds around you. Notice the quality of being, quality of presence. And you might, in your own time, let your eyes open, let your body move and stretch in any way that feels good. And just a few words before we transition. What does it mean to be awake? We've explored in this series 7 factors that cultivate wakefulness. In this talk, we explore this quality of steadiness and equanimity, the possibility, no matter what the externals are, to have that sense of inner steadiness, your capacity to be awake in heart, awake in mind, completely unto itself, regardless of the externals. Your capacity for joy, for kindness, for compassion. That steady, unshakable presence. Please enjoy the following talk. It's been a real pleasure to be with you. And welcome back. There was once a man who decided that no matter what, he wanted to know and to meet God. Dedicated his life to this searching everywhere, internally, externally, a life utterly, utterly devoted to this realization. And then one day, he discovers the house of God. And he comes up and he sees the little nameplate there on the door, God. And he very excitedly he's just about to knock on the door. And he realizes, wait a minute, if I actually meet God, I'm going to have to give up everything. I'm going to have to give up my whole sense of self, my dreams, my story, everything. I have to let it go. And kind of overcome with anxiety and fear, he very, very quietly backs away, makes his way down the steps so as not to make a little creak, and starts running as fast as he can. And then he goes on to become a teacher, teaching people how to find God. Sometimes I think I'm that guy. I've certainly had my experiences of great shifts in consciousness, and I'm also aware of that inner anxiety of like, do I really want to let it all go? And I think we all want to wake up on some level. We all want to be happy, but do we really? There's so many obstacles. There's so many things to surrender to in this life. In these teachings in Buddhist psychology, when the Buddha says nothing whatsoever is to be clung to as I or mine, that's heavy stuff. Nothing whatsoever is to be clung to as I or mine. Of course, we've all had that taste of when I and mine falls away, or when it becomes porous. Those are the moments where we feel the mystery, where we feel expansiveness. But to let it all go, well, we're going to find out eventually. I'd like to talk about the 7 factors of awakening. We've been working through these factors of awakening, and I'd like to talk as a review of them, but also to talk about the 7th, which is kind of considered the flower of practice, which is equanimity and steadiness. I'd like to talk a little bit as well of how bringing steadiness and equanimity into your practice can help you work with your deepest challenges. And also to talk a little bit about how we can bring this into action in the world. There's so much to be upset about in the world right now. So much polarization, so much anger, so many deep-seated generational wounds coming to the surface. And it seems, at least to me, that this is the time now more than ever when these practices are so critical. To become more self-aware, to become more aware of others, to become more aware of stress and suffering, and to be able to respond with wisdom and loving presence. this is really, really important right now. And I think that to have an understanding of these 7 factors of awakening and how to apply them can help you not only work with the challenges that you encounter in life that are between you and finding God, whatever that means for you, but also how to be in the world, how to work in the world. I love leading our New Year's retreats. Instead of a 7-day retreat, it's a 5-day retreat. And they always have this really strong emotional intensity because most people they schedule the retreat and they have a sense of urgency. Like, I have got to figure out my life for this next year. I got so many issues to deal with and I got to get a handle on them. And in one of the interviews with one of the practitioners, I was asking her, well, how's your practice? What are you noticing? And she said, well, I'm scattered. I'm exhausted. And to be honest, my meditation practice feels really grim. Everything seems so dark, and I'm judging myself for judging myself, and I can't get out of it. And I really need to figure this out because I got a life to live and I want to live it fully. And I was touched by her struggle. I certainly know that one well. And I suggested that instead of trying to figure things out right now, maybe she could just invest in the practice, bring in more rest, and just let there be more of a natural gathering of attention. And maybe things would lighten up. And certainly I've found that for myself, that when I feel that sense of urgency, I've got to figure it out, what I really need is to slow down. As the Quakers say, don't just do something, sit there. And there's something so magical about pausing. If you've ever had a creative project that's on your mind and you're worried about it and you're slogging through it, and then maybe one day you just sit down and like the muse is there and all the conditions are right and boom, it just comes through pretty quickly. I have certainly noticed that for myself, and I'm fascinated about the creative process. I can't make myself be creative, but I can create the most supportive environment I can for that to flow. And the more I'm aware of my own patterns and my own cycles and when I have energy and when I don't, I try to gear my life around that creativity to mine when the conditions are best, which for me is in the morning. But it's the same way with these practices that lead to liberation and to freedom. It's helpful to really look at the conditions that best support you. It also comes down to actions. Like, what are the practices that light you up and fill your cup? What most helps you be present for yourself and for others? In this tradition, continuity and growth in awakening, it's not so much dependent on what you believe, but on what you're practicing and what you're cultivating through your actions. And if you want to be awake, if you really want to wake up to that ultimate truth, then awareness of these 7 factors of awakening can be really, really helpful. It's not a doctrine. It's not something you have to sign up for to believe. They're really inherent qualities that live inside you, and they sustain your practice. They can help to cultivate a really rich internal world. And I do feel that ultimately this practice is about getting free, that when you're knocking on the door with God's nameplate on it, whatever that means for you, that the practice is about seeing clearly into the nature of reality. And studying the kind of the mechanics of the practice can be really, really helpful. And the 6 factors that we've been exploring they all kind of lead toward what's considered the seventh factor of awakening, of what's called equanimity or steadiness. Like having your keel, the keel of your boat firmly in the water. So equanimity, what does that mean? One of my favorite quotes: life is not difficult for those who have no preferences. Make the slightest distinction between good and bad, and heaven and earth are set infinitely apart. Those lines from the third Zen patriarch have always given me a sense of peace, maybe a little glimpse of what's possible. Life is not difficult for those who have no preferences. But make the slightest distinction between good and bad, and heaven and earth are set infinitely apart. In some ways, that points toward this preferenceless awareness of just being present. But on the other hand, they can also be a setup. Not only can they kind of set you up for self-judgment when you're not there, like, wow, what is preferenceless awareness? What does that really mean? But that preferenceless state can also easily slide into indifference. It can also point out to just relentlessly revealing how preferential you are all the time. And in my experience, that can be really discouraging and frustrating, ultimately in a good way. But noticing your preferences is a really important part of this practice. Noticing how the mind is constantly pushing away and reaching toward. So I'd like to do a little internal review of these seven factors of awakening. So if you'd like, you can close your eyes. This will be just a short little reflection. And again, think of these as internal states. You might take 3 slow, deep breaths right now. And soften on the out-breath. And if you would, just sense these qualities that are inherent inside. And you might sense them, how they exist inside right now, or if you can't contact them, you might just sort of sense your willingness to make room for that state. One quality is this inner quality of mindfulness, your capacity to observe without judgment. Take a breath. Imagine or feel that inside. The second quality is the quality of investigation, your capacity to look ever more closely at what is actually here and now. The third quality is cultivating energy, a vitality, a sense of resilience to stay in the moment with what is here. The next is a quality of joy, a joy of discovery. The next is a quality of tranquility, of relaxation. And you might sense now, is it possible to soften in any way? Your capacity to open and allow. And the next quality is the quality of concentration or one-pointedness. Can you sense the power of attention itself when it is directed with awareness? And sensing now this quality of equanimity, a quality of preferenceless awareness. You might sense the image of a tree kind of bending in the wind, rooted, but at the same time aware of and going with the flow, non-resistance. And if you like, you can now deepen your breath. If you like, you can open your eyes. These factors of awakening, in some ways, they seem kind of contradictory, don't they? On the one hand, we're kind of calming, and on the other hand, we're energizing. On the one hand, you're relaxing, but on the other hand, you're concentrating. And it really is the bringing together of these elements that kind of combine into this sort of this optimal state for awakening. So a little bit about equanimity. And I love that image of the tree bending in the wind, because one element, or think of two primary aspects. One is stability. That in order to be present, there's a physicality to it. Feeling strong and feeling stable in your body. Really helpful. But also a quality of emotional stability, a sense of emotional resilience. This is your capacity, rather than reacting, to kind of respond. It's not automatic pilot. It's not just sort of like setting the automatic pilot. It's actually being intimately present to what's here, but seeing what's there and then responding. Another quality to equanimity is calling on wisdom, the capacity to see clearly. And the word upekkha in the original language of the Buddha, one of the translations is to gaze over as if from on high. I can't remember who it was, but they spoke of how when we started to explore moving beyond the planet, and we got our first glimpse of Earth from the moon for the first time, that, according to this author, was the possibility of a kind of a harbinger of a consciousness shift, that we could actually see ourselves from outer space. And many of those who have had the opportunity to be in the International Space Station or to travel to the moon have talked about the mystical transformation of what it's like to look down on ourselves from this vast sense of space. A dear friend of mine who is long past, Sheila Morgan, was a therapist, and she had a poster of the Earth from the moon directly across from the chair where her patients would sit. And occasionally she would say, when you consider what you're struggling with right now, and you look at that poster, well, what's it like to hold them both? So wisdom is sort of that clear view. And from that standpoint, where you can see what's arising, you can see what's passing through, you can make room for wisdom, and you can make room for loving presence. When you're reactive, that's not possible. So equanimity actually makes room for wisdom, and makes room for compassion and kindness to flow. So upekkha, equanimity, steadiness, it's considered kind of the crown jewel of the practice. And as I mentioned earlier, the shadow side is it can look like indifference, but it's really the genuine experience. It's a very sublime state. It's allowing your inner life to really, really be there, to trust life. It's kind of it's a non-distracted state, and really kind of a generous state where you can actually allow things to be as they are. You can allow your heart to flow in the response to what is there. It may not ultimately be kosher to talk about this because it's a little bit different. But I was fortunate enough to take part in the study at Johns Hopkins exploring the effect of high-dose psilocybin on long-term meditators. And during the course of my adventure, which was quite powerful, every hour we would check in and we'd go through a checklist so they could sort of track the progress. And at one point in my experience, one of the questions was, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your negative emotional valence? Like right now, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is it like to kind of feel pain and suffering? When I heard the question, I said 10. Just caught in the turmoil and suffering of life. The next question is, what is, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your positive emotional valence? Your capacity to feel positive emotion? And I said 10. And I realized in that moment, really seeing the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows of life, the reality of stress and suffering, and the reality of the perfection of it all. It was a profound glimpse of equanimity. And we all need that sense of steadiness right now. We all need to have access to that sense of spaciousness. Not just for ourselves, but to be in the world. When we can access this, it can open up our capacity to grow dramatically. Because that spaciousness allows you to see what's real. It allows you to see what's true. And there are times in my practice when I can really feel the deep searing wound of some pain in the past, completely uncovered. And when I can do that, quite often, what follows with that is some form of loving presence, some sense of kindness, some sense of kind of a healing balm. And so with so much discord in the world right now, so much polarization, people pulling guns on each other over wearing a face mask or not, domestic violence being up so much, drug overdoses being up so much, that we're all more and more aware of what gets in the way of equanimity. And here in this tradition, we speak of these five mental states that occlude all possibility of being present. In their most simple terms, it's a mind that's filled with greed, a mind that's filled with hatred, a mind that is consumed with worry, a mind that is afflicted with sloth and torpor, sleepiness, heaviness, or a mind that's afflicted with doubt or self-criticism. Our practice ultimately is about coming in contact with these five mental states and finding a way to be with them. Someone who, deep in their practice, was really caught up in some family pattern stuff, original family pattern stuff. And certainly these days, those who are kind of stuck with family are very, very much up in seeing the old entrenched patterns that are very, very hard to shift when you're in a family pattern. And one thing that he was completely caught in was feeling so disappointed and so angry with an older sibling. And as he found himself moving into his meditation practice, he was just consumed with this deep upset. He described it as kind of an unrelenting knot. And so with this practice of rain, to recognize what's there, to sense if you can allow it or make room for it, to investigate it, to bring a sense of nurturing to it, he elected to take a closer look at this knot. And he saw that through this lens of these hindrances, or these 5 mental states, that he saw that he was afflicted with hatred. He just hated his older sibling. And he hated himself for hating his older sibling. He was afflicted with doubt. He doubted this would ever get better. He was worried that this would never go away. And so when he moved into this practice of rain, recognizing the affliction, and then sensing if he could be with that to make room for it, which in this case he was, and then to really sense how his whole body, how his nervous system held that issue, to feel that knot, and just to be with it, and then to open into loving presence, to nurture it with a sense of kindness or compassion or empathy. He could begin to feel a little bit of a shift at first. And as he sat with it, he thought, what can I say to my older sibling that could possibly create a shift here? And he realized she's not going to be able to hear this. She's not interested, and she really doesn't have the bandwidth. And again, a deeper sense of sadness. And then this question popped into his mind, and he just thought, well, can I just accept her knowing that she'll never change? And he got that image of that tree in the wind, where he realized maybe it's possible. Just a recognition. Maybe I'll never be able to have that conversation. Maybe I'll never be understood by my elder sibling. Can I hold that with empathy and kindness? And he began to feel a shift. He began to tap into just a sense of that quality of equanimity. Can I just let it be? Can I hold it? And I love that story because it points toward possibility. And I thought it might be interesting to do just a short meditation. And again, just to explore maybe something that's up in your life and just to sense what it's like to kind of run it through the filter of these 7 factors of awakening. And we'll see what happens. As someone wise said, the only outcome from this little meditation will be you'll feel better, you'll feel worse, or you'll feel the same. So prepare yourself for one of those options. If you like, you can close your eyes and you might bring into mind just something that's problematic in your life, something that's kind of just between you and feeling good right now. And you might take 3 slow, deep breaths and just take the next little while just to sense what might you want to spend a few minutes with. It can be helpful to really get specific if you can. And to kind of help you with this, it might be helpful to sense if you can create a little bit of a visual representation of some challenge in your life. Are there any words or sounds that you associate with it? And turn your attention to what it feels like inside. How does how does your nervous system hold this issue in your life right now? And you might just sense, in regard to these 5 mental states, is there a quality of hatred, of anger or ill will, aversion? Is there a quality of wanting, of desire? Can you sense any quality of worry or a kind of restlessness or agitation about this issue? Is there a sense here of a kind of sloth and torpor or heaviness or losing energy or kind of a downward spiral of energy that you experience here? And do you notice any quality of doubt or self-criticism? And now, as you sense this and how it lives on the inside, without trying to fix it, without trying to figure it out, let's just see what it's like just to hold it while you simultaneously reflect on these factors of awakening. And primarily, if you can let your attention be with kind of the felt sense, the kind of the somatic experience of it inside. If you were to hold this with a sense of mindfulness, of non-judging awareness, what's that like inside? Is it possible to bring to this a deeper quality of investigation, a willingness to kind of look more closely at what this is like? Can you imagine bringing a sense of energy to it, a sense of like resilience? Can you imagine a quality of joy, like a quality of kind of a joy of discovery, something you might learn here that might enliven you in some way? Can you imagine invoking a sense of calm, of relaxation or tranquility? What's that like inside? And if you were to call on concentration or one-pointedness, so you might, in a way, sharpen your attention to what is here. And in your own way, calling on a quality of equanimity, a quality of allowing, this sort of a looking over from a distance or from on high. And just take the next few moments just to sense, as you reflect on these qualities, what is this like inside? How does it shift? How does it move? And now, as you reflect on these qualities, on what it's like inside right now, you might just reflect on the following question. What advice do you have to give yourself right now? After being with us for a few moments, what advice do you have to give yourself? And if you were to do that, not perfectly and not all the time, what might that feel like? If you like, you can deepen your breath. If you like, you can open your eyes, or you can remain with them closed. And with the remaining time I have, I'd like to jump into just a little more esoterica around these 5 mental states and how they relate to these 7 factors of awakening. Naturally, when you encounter sloth and torpor, kind of like the heaviness, the kind of that spiraling down, well, then you can call on investigation and energy and joy. These are the factors that are enlivening. To bring, sometimes just to bring a little more energy in can be really, really helpful. If you look closer, you'll see more, you'll feel more. Calling on kind of the joy of discovery can be really helpful. On the other hand, if you encounter a lot of restlessness and worry where the mind can't settle at all, well, then here you call on these factors of relaxation and calming and tranquility. You might call on concentration as a way to gather your attention to what is present. You might call on equanimity, that quality of spaciousness. Because the very center of this is mindfulness, non-judging awareness. Quite often, either we have too much energy or not enough energy. So we're always trying to find that balance. And it's kind of easy to overthink it and intellectualize it too much. But essentially, really what it comes down to is what's happening right now. And it might be, wow, I'm losing steam, or I don't have the energy to be with it. Or it might be like I'm too agitated, I'm too restless. So that question of what is happening helps you to identify what's here. And then you can ask, well, how can I be with it? Or what does this need right now? And those 2 essential questions will really help to guide you through your practice, and particularly through challenges. As one of my teachers once said, life is therapeutic irritation. We grow through our challenges, and chances are your greatest growth has been when you've really, really been challenged. And I think it's really helpful sometimes to reflect on these qualities that can really support you in being more alive and in your own pursuit of what's most important. It's one thing to live in a cave where the disturbances are really, really minimal, but what about living in the world? How do you practice, and how do you cultivate this sublime state of equanimity, of steadiness in life? We all have our own conditioning. We all have our own natural tendencies to shut down or go into self-preservation or to lash out or get lost in our own particular desires. And being aware of these states, these 5 states that get in the way, and then these 7 factors of awakening can be helpful. I live in the woods outside of Washington, D.C., and one particular problem we have is that all the trees were cut down at the same time, about 100 years ago, at least where I live. So now we have these beautiful, majestic trees, beautiful mature trees, but many of them are dying, and they're dying at the same time. And it's amazing to see these kind of grandfather, grandmother trees, when they come down, the hole that they leave in the woods it's a huge gash in the woods. And when I first moved into the woods, I would just sort of feel the tragedy of that. But then you start to see the life that occurs, how so quickly it's a new ecosystem. Suddenly there's small plants, then there are bushes, and there may be one small tree that suddenly has the sun, and the large trees make the small trees impossible to grow. It's kind of the same thing with these 5 mental states. That when you are caught in greed, hatred, restlessness, sloth and torpor and doubt, it's it's kind of impossible for anything else to grow. And why remembering and recalling these factors of awakening can be so helpful. Calling on non-judging awareness. Your capacity to turn toward what is challenging and investigate it. To call on resilience and energy. To recall the joy of self-discovery. To remember to relax. To use concentration as a tool for calming and focus. And then to call on equanimity and allowing and spaciousness. And can you sense how each one of these factors, they're already there? It's a question of remembering them and making room for them. So these factors of awakening they're like seedlings. And it's a question of what is it that enhances the 5 mental states of the hindrances? Well, it's reactivity. It's unexamined reactivity. And what is it that enhances the 7 factors of awakening? Self-observation, pausing, relaxing and allowing. Part of it is learning how to sharpen your attention to be aware of what's happening as it's happening. And as soon as you can name a hindrance, I always imagine it'd be great to have a game show, name that hindrance. Where as soon as you can name it, you can tame it, as someone said, not very eloquently. But it's also helpful to remember that everything you seek is found within. What covers your essential nature can be revealed to you when you slow down and when you pay attention. It's always this question of how much control do you really have over your life? I love seeing little kids in the grocery store, the carts that have the wheel, and you can see there's some little kids who they really think they're driving the cart as they make their way down the aisle. That's pretty much us. I don't know how much control we have, but we do have awareness. We do have a capacity to heighten our attention to see what's real. And you do have a capacity to open to loving presence, to call on kindness and compassion and joy. And that's what opens us to equanimity. That's what allows us to open to the mystery. We're going to close with a short little reading, a short little reflection. If you like, you can close your eyes now. And take 3 slow, deep breaths. When we are afraid, we move into self-preservation. We move into an instinct to try to control. When we feel trust, when we feel a certain kind of verified faith inside, it allows us to open to the mystery. Reflecting on the following words. The saint knows that the spiritual path is a sublime chess game with God, and that the beloved has just made such a fantastic move that the saint is now continually tripping over and bursting out in laughter and saying, "I surrender." Whereas, my dear, I'm afraid you still think you have 1,000 serious moves. These 7 factors of awakening are these latent qualities that are already within. The more you relax, the more you pay attention, the more you call on sincerity in your practice, the more these factors will naturally become more present, the more naturally you will be guided by wisdom and by a loving heart. May that be so for you. May that be so for everyone you care about in this world, and may that be so for all beings. Thank you so much for your time and for your attention. Best wishes to you in your practice and in all that you are called to in your life. Thank you.